بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Today we enter a new station of iyyaka na'budu and iyyaka nasta'een, and that is the station of Tadhakur and Tafakkur. Tafakkur is to contemplate, to think. Tadhakur is, I can't think of a proper word to translate it, so just bear with me. Tadhakur and Tafakkur. So Tadhakur, right, is a higher level than Tafakkur. So you hear these two in the Quran quite a bit. إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِقَوْمٍ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. And that are signs for people who think, contemplate, right? لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَذَكَّرُونَ. So that they do tadhakkur, tadhkir. Right? So Tafakkur is a level under Tadhakur. And Tafakkur leads to Tadhakur. So contemplation, right, is meant to lead to Tadhakur. And I'll get more into the details and exactly what they mean. But Tafakkur is pretty straightforward, when you think about something. And the word Tadhakur, right, it's grammatically speaking, it is conjugated in what's called the way of tafa'ul. Right? Tadhakur, tafa'ul. Right? And you also have, for example, ta'allum. And you have tabassur, for example. Sorry. And you have other examples. And what this tafa'ul, what it means is, or tafa'ul, what it means is that there is an amount of effort that needs to be put in order to attain that thing. Right? So ta'allum means to learn. But it also means you're putting a lot of time and effort in learning, and that's how you actually become learned. Right? So the Prophet ﷺ says, "Al-ilmu innama al-ilmu bit-ta'allum." Knowledge comes with ta'allum, with putting effort and time in actually learning. Right? So tadhakkur isn't something that comes about just, like a light bulb switches on in your head, in your mind. But tadhakkur is something that comes about after a lot of tafakkur. Right? So after a lot of contemplation, it leads to tadhakkur. That's why tadhakkur is a higher level than tafakkur. Right? So that's how it's coming about. And the idea is, or one way to maybe think about it is, tafakkur, right? Contemplation happens in the mind. And if that contemplation starts connecting these dots and it becomes powerful enough, right, profound enough, it starts going from your mind to your heart. And that's where tadhakkur occurs. Right? And this is where the Quran is really aiming at. As we all know, the hadith, the very famous hadith, in the body is an organ, and if that organ is good, the rest of the body is good. If the organ is bad, the rest of the body is bad, and indeed is the heart. So the Quran, the hadith, Islam is really focused on the heart, purifying the heart, training the heart, disciplining it, developing it, so that the person's actions become better, right? They become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in order, or one of the ways to do that is through tafakkur. We contemplate, we look, we observe, and we start thinking, theorizing, hypothesizing, right? And then with time, you find that these ideas start forming actual visions. Right? They start forming views of life. They start connecting to one another to where now you're getting a much broader picture, a profound picture, a deeper picture where you can engage. And the more and more a person thinks and contemplates, it starts affecting the heart. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does point that out. And this works both ways, by the way, for good, and it works for bad as well. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلِتَصْغَى إِلَيْهِ أَفْئِدَةُ الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْآخِرَةِ وَلِيَرْضَوْهُ وَلِيَقْتَرِفُوا مَا هُمْ مُقْتَرِفُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about the stages of falling into sin. It starts off by willingly, right, out of curiosity, you start listening. You start, lending an ear to these ideas. Right? Meaning, you open a channel to your mind. The ear is a channel to the mind. Right? And now you're opening it willingly, right? Out of curiosity, you want to learn more about it, or you want to know more about it, and then that opens the channel until it starts becoming more and more. The person starts thinking about it more and more and more, to where it starts impacting the heart. And then and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they listen, and then they are okay with it, and start changing the heart to where, okay, I'm okay with this, it's not bad, there's nothing wrong with it. Whereas before they might say, no, this is bad, this is haram, something like that. And when they're okay, their heart was okay with it, it starts affecting the actual actions. وَلِيَرْضَوْهُ وَلِيَقْتَرِفُوا مَا هُمْ مُقْتَرِفُونَ. And then they'll start doing what they are doing. Right? So this is a very important station actually of Tawheed and being close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when we say Tadhakur, you have to have that effort, right? And part of that effort is actually searching, contemplating, looking, right? Researching. It's not something that comes about overnight. And that's why one of the scariest things is when you see someone who's not practicing, all of a sudden is practicing like crazy. This is scary. This is not how Iman develops. Iman is something that gradually grows, right? And that's how the companions were. In the beginning, a lot of things were permissible. It was only later on they started becoming impermissible, right? Like alcohol and fornication, these other things. Some came a little bit earlier, but some came a little bit after. Why? Because Iman needs to gradually grow. But these young individuals who, were doing drugs, they were in the clubs and whatnot, getting drunk, and all of a sudden, Islam enters their heart, and mashallah, they're mujahideen. They're warriors for Islam. It's not the way it works, right? This is just a complete imbalance. And I believe I explained this before, how it works. It's kind of like a rubber band effect, where if you pull a rubber band this way, right, and you let it go, it goes way over to the other side. So these people are living extreme lives in sinning, right? All of a sudden, they are interested in Islam. It's as if that rubber band is let go, and it goes all the way to the other side, the extreme side of religion. SubhanAllah. So in order to be someone who is being affected by dhikr or tadhakkur, right, there's a process, and that process takes time. And the Quran does point this out a few times in the Quran. I'm talking about the word tadhakkur and its goal, and that the Quran in of itself is a dhikra. It is a reminder, right? That's how it's commonly translated. Dhikra is commonly translated as a reminder, but I don't feel like reminder gives it its true meaning. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَكَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا قَبْلَهُمْ مِنْ قَرْنٍ هُمْ أَشَدُّ مِنْهُمْ بَطْشًا فَنَقَّبُوا فِي الْبِلَادِ هَلْ مِنْ مَحِيصٍ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَذِكْرَى لِمَنْ كَانَ لَهُ قَلْبٌ أَوْ أَلْقَى السَّمْعَ وَهُوَ شَهِيدٌ. Right? So in this verse, which is towards the end of Surah Qaf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, in that, right, all that has passed by, or all that you have read from this chapter, the Quran, that this chapter, Surah Qaf, starts with a reminder of the world, the natural world, how it works. It criticizes those who reject the next life, the resurrection. It talks about the nations that were destroyed prior to Quraysh and that time. It talks about paradise. It talks about the hellfire. Right? It talks about accountability. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when you look at all of this, right, and you contemplate it and you think about it, it serves as a dhikra. It serves as a reminder. And by reminder, I mean it in the way that we're, in the context that we're speaking about today. It's a reminder. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, for who? It's a reminder for those who have a heart, or those who pay attention. They're now lending their ear. They're willingly and enthusiastically listening to what's being said in these verses. Right? أَوْ أَلْقَى السَّمْعَ وَهُوَ شَهِيدٌ. They're paying attention to what's being said. And from here we can see that in order to truly benefit from the Quran, we need one of two things, or both. We need a heart. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, a person who has a heart, now we all have a heart, biologically speaking. But spiritually speaking, do we all have a heart? Not everyone has a heart, spiritually speaking, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that for some people, their heart is still pure, right? It hasn't been tainted by ideas, by actions, by sins that create these barriers, these hurdles that the Quran needs to go around or go above in order to really pierce the heart. Now, when we're engaged in society that has deviated from even the reverence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like in the world, the context that we live in today, right? God is just, He might be there. Who cares? Let's go skateboarding, right? This is how reduced Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has become, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is above His throne, above all, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So when a person is growing up in this environment, although they might be a Muslim and a proud Muslim and a believing Muslim, right? There has to be some sort of effect, or there's possibly effects on the heart. And it's only through Tafakkur, right? A lot of contemplation are we able to really pinpoint these hurdles. Oh my God, I have this here, right? This is here. This is hindering my ability to engage Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is just our challenge. This is our fitna. This is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested us with today. So some people, their heart are still subhanAllah maintained. It's still doing well, spiritually speaking. So when the Quran enters it, it has a very profound effect. It enters very easily, and it changes the heart. It influences the heart. For the rest of us, right, we have to do a little bit more, and that is to pay attention. Eagerly, right, pay attention to what is being said. And we won't finish this station today, but I will talk about this a little bit more, and I'll give kind of an appetizer to something that I feel is very important to know. And that is, how can we pay more attention to what's being said, right? I try to have khushu'ah. I'm trying to listen. It's not an issue of, I don't think the Quran is relevant. It's not an issue of, the Quran, I'm practicing. I don't need any more. The Quran doesn't have anything more to offer me. That's not the issue that many of us are facing. But for some reason, it's just very difficult to listen to pay attention, really. It's not the lack of eagerness. It's just, I don't know why. I'm trying to pay attention and focus in prayer. I'm trying to listen to the Quran and be affected by it, right? And this is a big challenge, and it needs to be overcome. And perhaps an effective way of doing it, right, is by doing something very simple. Words are very powerful. And a slight change in words, or a slight change in one word, can open doors to new things, right? We look at the Quran as being, yes, the Quran is something that benefits me. The Quran is good for me, right? We all believe this. If we don't, we have to in order to be a Muslim. But I want you to change the word benefit or good for me with the word need. I need the Quran. I need to listen to these verses. Right? I need what the Quran is telling me, what the Quran is offering me. Right? I need it. Remember iftiqar when we concluded Tawbah? Iftiqar is one of the highest observations of the world. When you look at the world around you and you contemplate it, you do a lot of tafakkur of it, you find more and more how much you are in need of this natural system that you live in. And if we are in need of that natural system, then we are in need of the one who's managing it, the one who created it, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's just the reality, right? So we need the Quran. And it's not just, I need the Quran in a superficial manner. I need the Quran for happiness, or to be happy. I need Quran to succeed in this life, and more importantly, in the next life. Because when the Prophet ﷺ says, every letter that you read in the Quran is 10 hasana, right? Well, do you need those 10 good deeds on the Day of Judgment? You see how different it is? Just by giving this word need. Now, when we pray, it's no longer about just an obligation. It's no longer just about love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are important. Now it's about, I need what I'm doing. This is something necessary to me. My success is heavily dependent on this. And you can imagine, just how on that day, the Day of Judgment, how the verses that you recited will come to your aid, how the prayer that you performed came to your aid. And even in this life, before the next life, how the verses of the Quran brought peace and tranquility to your heart, how the verses of the Quran helped you overcome a challenge or a situation. And a lot of people have doubts today. And those doubts aren't because, rationality has overpowered scripture, religious scripture. It's not about that. It's desires, hawa. People going after their own desires. That's what's overpowering their ability to understand religious text. That's just the reality, right? But when you are dealing with something, like someone you really want to have some alcohol because all of his friends are doing it, and it's building up in the heart and it's boiling in the heart. And then the person listens attentively to the Quran, and the Quran starts reminding that person there's a day of judgment. Right? You don't want that in your book of deeds, that book where it has every single thing written, right? And what you want is the good deeds that you earn for being patient and abstaining from drinking alcohol, right? It gives a whole different way of observing yourself and the events or the possibilities around you. So the Quran is telling us, if you want to truly benefit from the Quran, you need the heart, and this is something we are trying to develop. It's not that you either have a heart or there's no chance. No, this book is trying to build that type of heart where when the Quran comes, like the companions, when the Quran comes, it has such a striking effect on them, to the extent that even the smallest of deeds would see very profoundly impacted on these individuals. Right? When the verse came, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, la tarfa'u aswatakum fawqa sawti an-nabi. O you who believe, do not raise your voice above the voice of the Prophet ﷺ. Everyone after that, when they'd go to the Prophet, they'd whisper to him, Ya Rasulullah, I have a question, or something like that. To the point where one of the companions stopped coming to Salah, stopped going to the masjid. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, Prophet ﷺ asks, where's so-and-so? They said, man, he's been in his home, he hasn't come out. So Prophet ﷺ goes and visits him, right? What's wrong? And he's crying. He's like, what's wrong? So, Ya Rasulullah, this verse came down telling us to lower our voices in front of you. And I have a naturally loud voice, and I'm just afraid, right? I'm just afraid of unintentionally doing this, right? So the Prophet ﷺ counts, he's like, no, that's not what it's meant by it. It means, don't raise your voice disrespectfully, right? When the Prophet ﷺ is speaking and whatnot. So this is the impact it had. Now, for most of us today, you could read the Quran 30 times, cover to cover, and it doesn't change anything that we do because we're not paying attention to it. And perhaps the reason why you're not paying attention to it is that we just don't feel we need it. We don't feel it's beneficial to us. Right? We approach the Quran thinking, there's benefit, and we need to approach it saying that we need it. I need to hear what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. My success, my happiness, everything is dependent on it in this life and the next life. So there are three types of hearts that people have. One heart that is dead. A heart, and we're talking about spiritually speaking, a heart that is dead. So there is no remedy, there is no medicine for it except the mercy of Allah. That's it. Meaning there are some people whose fitrah, whose natural, spiritual disposition has been so tainted that no amount of reminder, no amount of advice will really pierce that heart. The only thing that can pierce it is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this person is like a blind person walking around and refusing any assistance, right? They're doomed. They're doomed unless the mercy of Allah comes and gives them his vision back. That's it. So for such people, the way we try and help them is through dua. There's nothing more we can do, right? And by the way, this isn't common, right? This isn't, meaning it's not 99% of society is walking around with a dead heart to this extent, right? It's few people who have this type of heart. And these are the very, like the a'immat al-kufr, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the leaders of disbelief, those who promote it and fight and are waging open war against any sort of theological belief, right? These are people whose hearts are dead. So they're walking around the world like a blind person, refusing any assistance. They're bound to hit some things, they're bound to get themselves killed, right? So the only thing that will save this person is the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah's mercy extends to all things, right? No one is a lost cause in Islam, or at least in terms of our belief. No one is a lost cause. If Abu Sufyan, the one who fought the Prophet ﷺ for 20 years, and then becoming a Muslim and one of the best Muslims, right? No one is a lost cause. The second type of heart is a heart that is alive, however, it is preoccupied. This is most Muslims, right? This is most Muslims today. Their heart is alive in a sense that they love Allah, they revere Allah, they revere the Prophet ﷺ, they revere the Quran. I mean, it'll be very, very, very rare to find someone who claims to be a Muslim but mocks, these fundamental principles of our faith, right? It's very, very rare. And in fact, if they mock it, they're not a Muslim in the first place, right? So this is most Muslims. Our hearts are alive in a sense that we believe in the next life. We believe in the Quran. We understand and recognize its importance, but our hearts are preoccupied with other things. So such a person or such people, they are in need of, truly putting effort in giving the Quran their attention, giving these ideas their attention. So their example is like a person who can see, however, they are looking at something that is not the goal. So this person can see, they see the world around them, right? But instead of focusing on the prize, for example, or the finish line, they're looking elsewhere, right? So this person, what they are in need of is taking their face, right? And that's the goal. That's a prize right there. And this is where the dhikra and the maw'idah, right? The maw'idah, which is, it's commonly translated as admonition, but admonition in the in the English language tends to be primarily you're admonishing someone for a wrong that they did. But a dhikra is you're admonishing them for their wrong and also encouraging them to do good, right? So these people, right, they are in need of removing that which is preoccupying their minds, or learning how to discipline what's preoccupying their minds to where they are able to focus on the goal, on the finish line, despite these preoccupations, right? The third type of heart is a heart that is alive and its eye is on the prize. Its eye is on the finish line. And these are the people of high iman, the higher levels of iman, and this is something we are trying to reach. It's not something unattainable. This is something that is very possibly, right, attainable by any one of us. Because first and foremost, it is a blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are trying to put the effort by doing tafakkur. So when we talk about these stations, we're doing tafakkur. But inshallah, with time, as we develop and we put more effort, right, and more time and dedication into this tafakkur, into this contemplation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open the doors of tadhakur for us, right? So those are three types of hearts, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among the highest level. Continuing, there are three types of abniya, right? Three types of foundations, or really three pillars of tadhakur. If we want to truly engage tadhakur, there are three things that we need to do. And that is al-intifa' bil-'idha, wal-istibsar bil-'ibra, wal-dhafar bi-thamarat al-fikra. Right? These are three things that we need to do. Number one, al-intifa' bil-'idha. And that is to benefit from what you are hearing. So when you hear the Quran, in order to do tadhakkur, you need to benefit from what you are hearing. Right? What does that mean? How do you benefit? Meaning, benefiting from what you hear is when what you hear causes your emotions to become aroused. Now you're benefiting from it. So when you're hearing a verse and it creates or sparks some sort of fear or concern, or hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or encouragement, motivation, right? Whatever it is, we have a lot of emotions, love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whatever it is, what you are hearing is now arousing the heart. It's not just arousing the mind. It is arousing the heart. You arouse the mind through questions, right? Looking for answers, but you arouse the heart with your emotions. Is what needs to happen. So when we listen to the Quran, it needs to be arousing the emotions. So this is when tadhakkur is truly being engaged. Maw'idah, as I said, not admonition, but something a little bit more broad than admonition. Maw'idah are two types. How we benefit, how we can arouse our emotions is two ways. Number one, from what we hear, the Quran, which I just mentioned. This is one of the ways we arouse our emotions. The second way is through what we see. And perhaps, specifically for our context, it is easier to be aroused by what we see than what we hear. Right? So as we try and build our tadhakkur, our ability to engage the Quran, and remove all of this dust and dirt from our hearts, right? We can focus on using our vision to arouse our hearts, looking at the world around us. Now we have access to so many images. And I'm sure you've all seen like a very beautiful picture. Now you just open your computer and it gives you these random pictures when you enter the login screen, right? And these are some breathtaking pictures. Well, isn't that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving you a gift every time you open computer to remind you, hey, there's something more out there than the buttons that you're pressing? And I just thought of this right now. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's putting it right on our lap to let us know that His mercy truly does extend to everything. Wherever you go, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly giving you, constantly reminding you. But again, it's about making sure the heart isn't always preoccupied with, all this worldly affairs. And we can develop and we'll work on it, inshallah. So by observing the world around you, and remember, connecting the dots, you can see a mountain. Everyone will recognize that this is a mountain. But it's about you connecting what you hear from the Quran with what you see. You connecting the purpose of this mountain, right, to your own self. Drawing these lines. And we've been talking about this throughout the course, or throughout this book. The second major element of Tadhakur is al-istibsar bil-ibra, wa huwa ziyadatu al-basira, right? And the ibra is a lesson. There are lessons everywhere. When we read the Quran, Allah is telling us about, He's giving us lessons. Sometimes, many times, we actually have to derive those lessons. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us what happened. These are the events that happened. These are the conversations that occurred. But then it's upon us to do tadhakkur, put the effort in contemplating the story to try and take out the lessons, to derive the lessons and the morals, right, from these stories, from these verses, from the world around you, right? So the more we are able to benefit from these morals and lessons, right, the more we develop insight. The more we look at a mountain as being more than just two plate tectonics that crashed into each other, right, and it formed this mountain, right? The mountain is more than that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He talks about mountains, He gives it certain roles. They form valleys, right, which make paths for us. It's easier to go from one place to another. Back in the day, right? It's easier to go from one place to another. This way you don't get lost on the way. It's only one way in a valley, right? These valleys channel water to where it forms streams and rivers, right? So that when water comes, when it rains, it doesn't just be absorbed by the dirt and the earth, and then you have nothing left. No, now you can drink water, right? You can use it to water your own gardens and farmland, etc. And animals can benefit from it. The mountain also plays the role of stabilizing the earth, so that when it rotates, right, it doesn't rotate in an irregular way. So it plays a role. And when you look at the mountain, you remember that role. And you remember how Allah's subhanahu the wisdom behind how He created it. And then from there, you start branching into endless possibilities. Allah created the mountain this way to cater to us. Look at His mercy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the mountains to form valleys to guide us from one village to another village. Do you think the one who is concerned about guiding us in our worldly affairs is not concerned with guiding us in our spiritual affairs? When you look at the mountain and its beauty, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it for you to enjoy, right? So you start branching out into these other things. Now you are looking at the world with insight. Insight that is getting you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's also making this world much more fulfilling to you, much more exciting. And you see this all around you. And you can't help but say, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Look at the mercy. Now you can see Allah's mercy everywhere. And the more you see His mercy, and remember the word need. These things aren't just there because we need these things. We need the mountains. There's this cool YouTube channel called What If, and they have all these questions. What if, for example, oxygen disappeared? Right? What if oxygen disappeared for 5 seconds? No, it wasn't. What if oxygen disappeared? It said humans can survive without oxygen for about 30 seconds or 3 minutes. 3 minutes, something like that. 3 minutes and 30 seconds, something like that, right? But the Earth would collapse in 5 seconds. Oxygen isn't something that is good for us. It is something that we need. And Allah has provided it for us. Food isn't something that is enjoyable. It is something that we need, and Allah provided it for us. Mountains isn't something that are beautiful. It is something that we need, and Allah has provided it for us. The sky isn't something that we, just look at and benefit from. It's something that we need, and Allah has provided for us. To the last atom, the way the atom works, we need the atoms, and Allah has provided it for us. And when we look at the world from this lens of need, right, we need all of these things, and then we connect the dot with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who provided us with it, right? Allah has provided us with all that we need. Isn't that mercy? Isn't that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showing His mercy to us? وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. My mercy has reached everything, literally. But how many people actually see this? Right? I'll be honest, this is only recently where I started understanding this more and more. And I've been studying Ibn Qayyim's books for, since 2010. It's coming close to a decade. I've been studying his books, and I'm still learning so much from the ideas that he's giving us. Rahmatullah, may Allah have mercy on him. But the more we contemplate, the more Tadhakur that we start doing. The more we contemplate, the more the world starts arousing and impacting our heart. And the more we are able to contemplate the world, the more insight we have of the world. SubhanAllah. The third, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, building off that point, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, going back to Surah Qaf. Surah Qaf is such an amazing chapter, subhanAllah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'll just paraphrase here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points to many of the natural wonders around us. And in the end, or I'm sorry, not in the end, but in these verses, He says, تَبْصِرَةً وَذِكْرَى لِكُلِّ عَبْدٍ مُنِيبٍ. Right? It is a tabsira, an insight, and dhikra, a reminder for every لِكُلِّ قَلْبٍ تَبْصِرَةً وَذِكْرَى لِكُلِّ عَبْدٍ, to every servant who is munib. Remember we spoke about this last time? Right? Munib. See how all of these things are coming together and they're interacting with one another, connecting the dots. How can I use my inaba, my coming back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to increase my insight? And how can I use my insight to, help me do inaba more and more, or do tawbah more and more? They're interacting with one another. And the more we are able to connect these dots, the more we are able to truly enjoy and benefit from these concepts. So the more we are able to see the insight, or to develop insight over all of these things that we've been talking about today, right? The more we realize, how much Allah has given us His mercy, as we just mentioned. And the more we do that, the more we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the more we love Allah, the more effort and time and enthusiasm we have for coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Ibn Qayyim uses the word as-safar, safarul qalb ilayhi. The heart is traveling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So the more we really engage this, the more effort, the more time, the more energy we put in traveling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third necessary element of Tadhakur is al-dhafar bi-thamarati al-fikra, achieving the fruit of contemplation. Right? The Tafakkur, as we mentioned in the beginning, Tafakkur, the fruit of Tafakkur is Tadhakur. The fruit of contemplation is the emotional arousal, or the emotional reminder. So, Tafakkur or fikra, contemplation has two fruits. The first is حصول المطلوب تاما, بحسب الإمكان والعمل بموجبه رعاية لحقه. That is to, let me just remember this correctly. Right, so the more a person contemplates, right, the more they realize their need for these things. So the more a person contemplates the reality of salah, for example, or the reality of fasting, sawm, the more they think about it, they study it, they learn about it, the more they realize how beneficial it is to them and how much they really need it. Right? So the more we do that, the more willing or more likely we are to achieve the fruits or to actually do these things. The more we see salah as beneficial, the more likely we are to actually pray 5 times a day. The more we feel that we need salah, the more likely we are to do salah. So, and this creates also, right, if we see that salah is something necessary to us, we want to make sure we fulfill salah in its most pristine manner. So for example, when people work out, someone is they want to work out, they want to build their body, right? So they're doing all these exercises. Now, building the body is a science. It's not random. You can't just do any physical action and it'll develop your body. No, there are certain things that you need to, there are certain types of exercises. Are you cardio, or are you, for example, conditioning, or are you looking to strengthen your body? These are all different things. So it requires research. And it requires proper execution. So apparently, for example, there's a certain, when someone does push-ups, right? The body needs to be at a certain angle. The arms need to be at a certain angle, or else you're not fully engaging the muscles. And therefore, you are depriving yourself of the full benefit of it. Well, same thing with salah. Same thing with fasting, right? There are certain goals that are in play here. There are certain things that a person is trying to achieve, but they need to do it properly. A person can't say, okay, I'm going to do salah and I'm going to do it in the way my heart guides me. No. You need to do it the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to, through the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Right? So it causes us not only to be more interested in actually applying these things and performing them, but it makes us more interested in performing it in its most pristine manner. And subhanAllah, what happens here is the following. The better we perform our acts of worship, the more we get out of it. The more we get out of it, the more happiness it brings us. The more fulfillment we feel. The more fulfillment we feel, the more we want to do it. The more we do it, the more fulfillment. The more fulfillment, the more we do it. So it's something that builds. It's like a snowball effect. It just builds on itself. And it keeps building and building and building until the person becomes a leader of iman, a leader of taqwa. So to give an analogy here, it's like a business person. A business person starts small. They barely have anything. And they're looking to start their own business. Now, they're going to do the research. And that research requires you to look at your own skills. What am I good at? Am I good with numbers? Am I good with people? Am I good? Do I check out as a manager or as a supervisor? Right? Okay. What about the area that I'm living in? The economy. Right? Not every business is appropriate for every economy or every context. Right? Someone who is selling, for example, qurtas, right? In the American context, now they are selling to a much smaller population versus a t-shirt. Now they're selling to all Americans. Does that make sense? So they have to do all this research. And being a small business person, they're taking a very big risk because it's most likely their life saving that's going on. It's about to be used. So they put all this energy, effort, and then they start their business. And since their business is small, their profits are going to be small as well. But what happens is they start making some profit. They start making some deals, right? And that brings them happiness. And the profits that they see, although small, relatively speaking, brings an amount of fulfillment and excitement to that person, which creates enthusiasm and motivation, which causes the person to continue to pursue their path of business. And this keeps building on itself, right? The same thing with iman and the function of iman. The more we do properly, the more fulfillment that we feel. The more fulfillment that we feel, the more we want to do. That's the reality. The more we feel the beauty of the Quran, the more we want to listen to it. The more we feel the Quran is benefiting us, the more interested we become in the Quran itself. And the author says, إنما ينتفع بالعظة بعد حصول ثلاثة أشياء. Benefiting from the maw'idha occurs after three things. And how much time? What time is it? Why don't we stop there? Okay, inshallah, we'll continue this in the next session. The next session we'll start with how we actually benefit from what we hear, from the maw'idha, right? From the admonition. How do we benefit from it? Right? So there are certain things that we can do or we should be doing in order to fully engage that maw'idha, that reminder. Right? So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from the dhakireen, those who remember Him constantly. وصلى الله على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين.